Hey everybody, welcome to my very first live stream. So I hope this is going out to everyone. If you're seeing it, wave a hi. I'm using the free version of StreamYard, so this is not, and this is my first go at this. So this may or may not work out great, but, and I apologize if the audio is not, super high quality. I'm just using the webcam on my computer. If I start doing a lot of these, I'll get some nicer equipment. But yeah, so while I kind of wait for everyone to arrive, hey, looks great and sounds great. Awesome. But yeah, a little bit about myself, real quick. If you're just tuning in on this, let me say that welcome. I've been working on a 1956 Calcraft for the last year now, and we're kind of moving on to where it's we're finally working on the interior. Before that, we renovated a 1968 Playmore, and it was kind of a disaster when we got it, as all of our campers are. Let me show you a picture of that if you don't remember it from our videos. Let me see how this works. Make sure this will be a good test for everything. So there it is when we bought it. Had this lovely paint job. But the thing that really led me to start using SketchUp on these was when I started tearing it down, we got to the interior and it was missing part of it. Oh, there's the finish. Okay, I didn't get that quite right. Let me do this. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so this was the interior of the Playmore once I'd torn one of the walls off, and somebody had added some additional material, and we were missing this entire top of the curbing up here. And that kind of led me to think I'm going to need something that will really hold it together, and or that will really help me keep everything square and kind of figure out these measurements. It was also missing several of the roof joists, and this other side was pretty wrecked as well. So I started using SketchUp with that one, and it turned out great in the end, and we were really happy with it. So I knew that when I came to work on the Calcraft that I'm working on now, we were definitely going to use SketchUp through it. But yeah, it was. I think it may have been a hunting trailer, and it was pretty scuzzy. But most of the interior was still there. This is the finished result after a year of working on it. Of course, we did that during the pandemic when our events business was put on hold, and we weren't, we were just sitting around our house waiting for things to go back to normal. And I said, well, hey, we've got that camper sitting out in the backyard. Why don't we fix it up? So. But let me go back to, so this is the current camper that we're working on. This is the 1956 Calcraft. It's, pretty similar to all the other little teardrop, or not teardrop, but the canned ham style trailers that I've worked on. And it is pretty neat. I like it. I think it's really cool, but there were some interesting construction methods. That was recently when I was putting the skin back on. But so I used SketchUp to record all the measurements off of it and to, sort out what was missing and make sure that everything was kept nice and square. And it really made this task, I don't want to say super easy, but a lot easier than it could have been. That's my, I think I'm sharing stuff from the wrong folder. Oh, I'm in my download folder there. But So when you first take the skins off of these, you can see all the studs, and this is the good point where you can start making a lot of measurements from there. One thing you can see right here is that the bottom of this camper started to head downwards here because it had been in a wreck and the frame was all messed up and it was pretty well destroyed. You can even see inside here the stove is not perpendicular to the wall here. So there's definitely a lot of structural damage. My original plan was to build a template for this wall directly on here, and that was definitely not going to be possible with how out of square everything was. So I just had to measure each individual piece and then assume that when it was built, everything was supposed to be square. So that is the assumption that we make when we use SketchUp, because SketchUp works great for making everything square. But as soon as you pull your walls off, you can start making your diagram. And I should also mention that if anyone wants to download the SketchUp that I've made of this camper, it is in the link to this live stream, and it is also in the link on, or in the below the video on our previous video. And I don't know that it's 100% up to date because I'm still continuing to work on it, but it is pretty up to date. So, okay. So you make your drawing, and I think I've shown this in previous videos. This clipboard actually has all of my plans for how to build this. And they're not really in any order, but these are the kind of things you can do with SketchUp. You can, there we go. You can print these out. You can even add measurements to them and take them out and work on things. And so that is super convenient. You can hide parts that you're not working on. And I figured out something recently that I thought was just really cool. I didn't know that SketchUp could do this. Hello from the south of France. But you can get an app, and it's on Android and it's on iOS. So you can also use this on an iPad, but it's called SketchUp Viewer, and you can look at your plans on your phone. And you can also, if you use tagging appropriately, you can do things like remove certain sections so you can see inside. I think that's super cool and super handy. I haven't actually used it for much of anything yet, but I know a lot of times I'll get outside to work on something and I'm like, man, what was it on there? And you can put measurements in there and stuff like that. Anyway, that's not the focus of this video. So the focus of this video is that, one of the questions I've gotten asked a lot is, do you ever do tutorials on how to use SketchUp? And I always say, no, there's plenty of tutorials on YouTube for doing that. But, maybe it would help to have a tutorial that's specifically aimed at working on a camper. Because, there's a lot that you can do in SketchUp, and not everything is something that you need to know. So let me say a couple things about how you make your, I gotta get used to that. There, maybe. Okay. So let me say a couple of things about how to make this sort of drawing. You'll see I've got it kind of color coded, and I really like to use those red and blue pencils. You could also use one of those 4-color pens. It's nice to be able to quickly make a mark that means something from all the other marks that you're making, because you're going to be making a lot of them. But I make these little legends so that I can color code some of these boards, because when you start disassembling a camper, what you'll hopefully find is that everything was kind of a standard size. So you can rip your material down to that standard size and then just make it a certain color. So well, okay, I grab a board from that pile to make those, and I grab a board from this other pile to make those. So I usually start measuring from something that I can tell is square, or at least something that's complete and still there. Oftentimes, if the wheel arch was made out of a big single block of wood, that might be a good place to start with. That's how I started on this one. That's how I started on making the drawings for the previous camper, I think. And just work away from there. Part of the reason why you want to color code those with a little key, so that you know, okay, each one of the boards that's this color is going to be 1 9/16 thick, is because you can just record its length and then the space between it and the next board. And sometimes if everything's out of square, you might have to measure in a few places and just kind of average it. When you go to SketchUp, you'll find whether things are really where they're supposed to be or not, because SketchUp is going to, sort of enforce it by being to scale. Anyway, I thought for the tutorial, what I would do is I would start by starting with this area and kind of moving forward, because I think what a lot of people want to know about is this outer curve here and how you come up with that. And that's not something that I measure. It's something that is sort of approximated, excuse me, in the SketchUp, but the way it's formed is by the way the wood bends across all these pieces. So it's, if it was a case where you're planning on reusing your skins, you're going to have to kind of get it close and then do some adjusting, maybe add some, maybe take some away, and get to it there. But honestly, this actually, when I bent those boards and fit some of the old cabinets back in place, the curve was pretty close to what it was supposed to be. So it's reasonably accurate. I think as reasonably accurate as you can expect. Yeah. One thing I'll say about working on SketchUp is I don't really like doing it on a laptop. You can, but I really find it difficult to use with just a trackpad. So I would recommend using an actual mouse. It's always nice to have a full-size keyboard. But, whatever you're comfortable with, this doesn't work on like an iPad or anything like that. They just don't really have a mobile version, aside from that SketchUp viewer app. So you can make it on your computer and then go view it on the app if you would rather. Oh, hey, let me see how this works. There we go. So Larry from Mobile Tech is here, and I know several of you are his students. So that's nice to have you all here. Welcome. But yeah, Larry mentioned that you can use the old wall skin to draw the profile out on the floor, on paper, tables, or however. And yeah, that was something that we definitely considered doing when we did our Playmore, because we had no idea how we were going to get that skin to match back on it. But we actually just rebuilt the wall directly on top of the other one, and that worked out pretty well. But yeah, we had considered all kinds of different ways to do it, and yeah, if you have a nice driveway or something where you can use a chalk or something, I don't know, lots of ways to do it. But yeah, thanks for letting me try out the little show comment feature there. That actually works pretty cool. So yeah, if you do have any questions in the middle of this, I've got two screens here, so I'll be looking at the other screen to work on this, but I'll try to look back and make sure and see your comments and pop those into the window if I see one to address. So, and if you're following along, this video is going to be posted on our YouTube, so you could always follow along then and pause it and whatnot, and hopefully that would work pretty well, because I don't know how easy this will be to follow along live. You're welcome to try. So okay, let's get SketchUp up here. Let me share that window. Okay, so I believe Catherine also put a link to SketchUp free in the description of this live, and then also in the description of the previous video. If you just go straight to their website, immediately they're talking to you about their paid versions, but there is a free version, and it just runs in the browser on your computer, so you have to have an internet connection to do this. But you know, it's free. It's pretty powerful. Lets you do quite a bit of stuff. I'm not an expert at this. I probably am doing some things the hard way. There's probably a lot more ways than I know how to do things to do it, but I've come up with a way that works pretty okay for what I need it to do. And you know, I would love to become an expert in all these 3D design programs. I'd love to, you know how to do things in Fusion that I know it can do, which is a program by Autodesk. But I don't have the time to learn all these. So I know what I can do with this. I know how to do it. I'm going to plug away with this. Okay, so let's get to that. So you have to make a Trimble account, which is the company that owns SketchUp. And so once you do, you're kind of greeted with this scene here, or with this screen here. And these are all projects that I've worked on. My Playmore's there. This is the Calcraft that I'm currently working on. I'm trying to figure out a porch addition to our house. This is the Playmore, or another model of the Playmore that I was working on, and then some other stuff for our business. I'm not going to jump right into the model that I've made of the Calcraft, but we will make a new one. Sometimes what happens is, you know, this little caret next to create new, I always like to make sure that fractional inches are selected, because if it's set in feet and inches, which unfortunately is how I had it set from when I started the Calcraft, and I'm supposed to be able to switch it back, but it never takes, and I don't know what's going on there. I need to figure that out. But if you start with it set in fractional inches, then everything, all your measurements and stuff are just in inches. You don't have to, you know, 2 feet, 6 inches and 7/16 and, you know, all that stuff. It's just a lot easier to work, and a camper is not on an architectural scale where you need to be worrying about, you know, feet. Everything can just be in inches on one of these. So just make sure that's set, and then hit create new. And this is the sort of opening screen of your camper. There's all these little, I forget what they call these little stand-up guys. Maybe they call them stand-up. But they've got these little people here that are kind of there to give you an idea of scale. If you click on them and press your delete key, they're gone. And that's usually the first thing I do. Next thing I do is I save it, because what SketchUp is going to do is it's going to auto-save during the process, but only if you've already saved your project. So start by saving a copy of it, and I'm just going to call this, I don't know, I'll call it tutorial. Okay, so with that done, it will autosave every, I think, 5 minutes is what it does. So if you should drop out for some reason or forget to save before you leave, it's in there. The thing to know about SketchUp, at least where it pertains to essentially a woodworking project like rebuilding a camper, is that you're just making a bunch of boxes, and you're stacking those boxes. So the things you need to do are, the things you need to know how to do are how to make a rectangle, how to turn that into a box, how to group it so it doesn't stick to other things that you make, and how to position it, and how to do all of those things accurately. And that's very easy to do, actually. So the other thing I'll say is it's very important to remember some keyboard shortcuts. I mean, you don't have to, but it's so easier if you know those shortcuts. So much quicker. But I'll try to do this without hitting shortcuts, at least to start. So the rectangle tool is right here, and okay, it is used obviously for making rectangles. And you'll see when you click on it, it pops out all these other options. And so the top one's rectangle. There's also a tool here for doing circles and things like that. So sometimes you need to poke a circle or a hole in something that needs to be a circle, and that's where you'd use that. But if you click on the top one, that's just the rectangle. And you'll see it's, I can start it wherever I want. Let's start right here. If I click and draw it out, I can make it whatever size I want. And if you look down here in this bottom corner, it actually tells you its dimensions. And I do always still confuse which dimension is width and height and stuff like that. So sometimes I just do it and then I guess from it. But if you want to make something that is a specific size, and if you make something you want to get rid of, you can always go up here to this little reverse arrow and click that, and that'll undo it. But if you want to make something a specific size, you can click once, start to draw out your box, and then type your dimensions with your computer. So if I type 24, oops, sorry, I was in the num lock. Let me go back. Okay, so I click, I start to draw, oh, no, hang on. Click, start to draw it out, and type 24, 36, enter, and now I've got a 24 by 36 rectangle there. Now, how do you turn a rectangle into a box? Well, there is another tool over here, right here, called push-pull, and that lets you either pull something into a box, pull a two-dimensional thing into a box, or push a hole through something else. So if you click that, and you can click the top tool there, then you'll see you bring that over there, and it highlights in blue. You can pull it up as high as you want. Let's say I'm making just a piece of plywood, and it's 3/4 inch. I can also type in 3 divided by 4, which is 3/4, and hit enter, and there it's a 3/4 inch piece of 24 by 36 plywood. So go back to the selection tool once you've made your little box, and click it again. I'm going to zoom in on this, and I'm zooming by rotating the mouse wheel. So if you click on it, usually a triple click until the whole thing is blue, and then right click on it, hit make group, and there this is one solid object. So if I make another object, it won't automatically stick to that. Here, I will show you. So if I hit the rectangle tool, I can make a box right here. I go and hit push pull. I pull it up, say 2 inches, whatever. Select, click it, make it a group. And now I can go to the move tool, move, and I can move it around. And you can pass it through other objects. Like an object is not going to stop it from moving. Let's see, it just dropped through it there. But what I can do is I can grab a corner with the move tool, just put it on the corner, and I can move it over right onto another corner. Pretty easy, honestly. I know that's a lot of steps, and I kind of did that really quick, which is why we're going to do it some more. Just to show you real quick, if you, I'm just undoing these, if you forget to group something. So I haven't grouped this. I undid it back to where it wasn't grouped. And I'll take my rectangle tool again, and I'll just draw a rectangle on it. And I'll hit push pull. See what I did there? Like there's no line here. This is one solid object that has this kind of funny shape. So you don't want to do that because then things will stick together and you can't move them independently and put them where you want them. That's the problem with that. Okay. So I'm going to hit my select tool. I'm going to grab that whole thing. I'm going to press delete. And we're going to actually do something from our diagram. I did also pull, I made a PDF of all my diagrams. Not all of my diagrams, but all of my hand-drawn ones, so that it was in here. And I think I'll probably put a drive link to those if you want to download them and look at them. They're kind of jumbled up though. So okay, so let's start with this one, and I'm not going to leave this on the screen because I don't know, it's too much. But I'm going to start with this rectangle here, and I'm going to make that, and then I'm probably going to move to this one. I'm going to make the gap between those. I'm going to do this long one. I'm going to make this. I'm going to work my way over into this front area, which is pretty easy. So let me get SketchUp back up here. There we go. Any questions before I start this? Anybody? You can go ahead and type. I'll get started. Okay, so one other tool I should maybe explain. There is this little tape measure right here, and that has a bunch of other things under it. But one of the things you can do with that is you can draw temporary marks to just use as guides for drawing other things. So I'm going to draw this line out. My walls were originally 1 9/16 inches thick. There we go. And I decided to make them 1.5 inches thick because it was easier to cut that out of 2x4s. So there we go. So I'm going to, just like when you're drawing something, if you want to type in a specific measurement, you just click. And I always find with a lot of things, it's easiest to start here on the axes that they have there. So you just click and start drawing in the direction you want it to go, and then type 1.5, and it'll make one line that's 1.5 inches away from there. Lumber was much bigger back then. So if you're, that's a good point to make. If you're trying to go to the hardware store and just buy something that will replace pieces of wood that you're taking out of your old camper, chances are there's nothing at the store that's a good fit. So I always suggest ripping down larger blocks of wood. It's usually a little cheaper that way. And the wood's usually a little better quality. But if you start with a larger piece of wood and rip it down on your table saw, you can get much closer to those original dimensions. Okay, so I made this little line, and then I'm going to make another line from the green axis, and that wheel arch was, if I look at my diagram, 35 7/8 inches. So I type 35 space 7 divided by 8 and hit enter, and this little box here is as big as that piece. So I just take my little rectangle tool, and you'll see if I hover over those lines, it will draw that rectangle to those marks. Sometimes I find that easier to do that way. It just kind of depends. So then I take my push-pull tool, and I hover over that until it turns blue, and I raise it up 11 1/8. 11 1/8. Man, I'm not saying that very well. 11 1/8. How about that? There we go. And there you go. Have that piece of wood that makes that wheel arch. Now I'm not going to draw the actual arch on there right now because again, that's something that you kind of have to approximate, or you have to take loads and loads and loads and loads of measurements. So it kind of depends on your specific case. Yeah, I'm not going to redraw it on here. I did draw it on my other one. So grab your selection tool now that you've made a board that is a very specific size, and triple click on it until everything's highlighted. Right click on it and hit make a group. And now this is a solid piece of wood that won't be stuck to something else. One thing I should say about the options under the right click, you can also make a component, which if you have repeating pieces of wood that are, identical, they're always going to be identical. You could make it a component, and then and this is a little hard to explain without showing it, but any future change you make to this piece of wood will be reflected in all of those other copies of it. If you just make it a group, it's a unique individual piece of wood. And I usually leave things as groups. I don't do components too often because sometimes I forget what's a component and what's not, and I try to make one tiny change to one, and then suddenly I've got changes on the other one. So it can be useful, but I don't use it very much. So one thing after you've made a piece of wood, use your selection tool and click off of it so it's not highlighted, so there's no chance of you drawing another piece on top of it. But if you do want to edit this piece, change its size, cut a hole in it, which I can show you how to cut a hole in it. If you double click on it, it will open that group up so that you can edit it again. So if I then take, let's say I had a rectangular wheel arch, I can draw a rectangle on there, take my push-pull tool and push it through until, you can pull it out this way, or you can push it through this way. And if you hover over this back edge, it will go ahead and cut it out for you. So if you have square wheel arches like that, you probably have kind of an ugly camper. I'm sorry. Okay, that's our first piece of wood. The next piece that goes right in front of that is an upright piece that is 1 1/16 inch wide. It's the same width this direction as all the pieces on this wall are. So if I go to my tape measure tool and I hover over this line and draw it out this way, then I type in, what did I say it was? 1 1/16? 1 space 1 divided by 16. And now I've got that. So if I go to my rectangle tool, I can hover at this little corner here, draw to this corner. Oops, get in there. Oh, right, because I didn't. Okay, there we go. Oh, well, I hit it right. My button clicks are getting away from me. There we go. Okay, so I make my little rectangle there. Well, Larry says he has a camper with square arches in the wheel wells. It's a Canadian. It could be pretty. It could be nice and I don't know, modern. Okay, so we've made our little rectangle there, and I look on my diagram and I measured it out to be, hard to read, looks like I wrote 36 inches. So I'm gonna draw that up 36 and hit enter. I'm going to take my selection tool. I'm going to triple click on it to highlight the whole thing. I'm going to right click. I'm going to make it a group. And I'm going to click off of it. I'm going to go back to my diagram. I'm going to see that I wrote down that there's a 2 7/8 inch gap until I get to the next piece. So I'm going to go take my tape measure tool. I'm going to draw that out. I'm going to write 2 space 7 divided by 8. I'm going to go take my rectangle tool. Oh, I forgot one thing. I need another line. I'm going to take my tape measure. And I can see on my diagram that this is a blue coated piece, and it's a 1 inch and 9/16. So I'm going to click on there. I'm going to draw it out 1 divided by 9, no, not 1 divided by 9, sorry. 1 space 9 divided by 16, hit enter. Now I'm going to take my rectangle tool, and one thing I didn't do is sometimes it helps to have a another tape line drawn right on that origin. So I'm going to add one there. I'm going to take my rectangle tool, hover over the intersection of those 2 points, switch to, oh, I'm sorry, I'm using shortcuts again. I'm going to take my push pull tool, and this one goes all the way up to the roof. Now, on these pieces that go to the roof, you'll find that they're cut at an angle. So when I'm measuring, I measure to their longest point, because if you think about it, I'm going to have to cut that entire piece and then cut an angle into it. And you could measure that angle and try to copy it onto your piece of material, but I find that to be fraught with error. I wouldn't recommend doing it. So what I'll do is I'll just cut it to length, and then I'll let me step back. What I'll do is I'll make that piece in SketchUp, and then I'll make this curve and see where that curve crosses those pieces, and measure both sides of those and measure that onto the piece of wood, because that's a lot easier than trying to put angles in there and do all that stuff. If any of that makes sense. Some of this you might have to figure out yourself. But so looking at my diagram, I see that I wrote that piece is 77 1/8 inch tall. So I click on there and I start to head in that direction, and I type 77 space 1 divided by 8. And I hit enter. And with the mouse, if you just roll that center wheel out, you zoom out. But if you don't have that option, you can hit the Z button, or if you click down here on the bottom, there is an option there. But it makes it so much slower if you have to click these buttons all the time. So Z is zoom, H is hand, which lets you slide around. O is orbit, which lets you rotate around something. Or a lot of these can be done by just pressing the center mouse button, or rolling the wheel, stuff like that. Oh, Larry says he uses an angle square to get the angle of the angle on the tops of the studs. And yeah, so, it is possible to measure them. And definitely, if you've got something that's in good shape, probably measuring them is the better way to go. If you've got one where the tops are all rotted away and the curbing's destroyed, that's the truth with a lot of these that I've worked on. They've been so far gone that there's not a lot that I can measure. So this kind of helps, SketchUp kind of helps you sort of recreate that and sort out how it must have been built to rebuild it. Yeah, there you go. That's how it works. Okay, so moving on toward the front, and I think one thing I forgot to do is to group that. So I need to triple click that, right click, press group. I'm going to go back to my tape measure tool. The next piece will be this big block that goes under the door, and it is 22 7/16 long. So I'm going to draw out a piece that's 22 7 divided by 16. Yeah, sometimes you get lucky, and I was surprised that there was so much still there on, like, the actual material was still there on this camper, but everything on the bottom was so busted up that it made it really hard to take accurate measurements off things. And this piece is 2 7/8 inch tall. 2 space 7 divided by 8. Boom. Click it, right click, make group. So you kind of see how this is coming together. It is a time-consuming process. I'm not going to say it's not, but it is a very useful process. And I'm kind of using shortcuts here. So, you know, T is tape measure. So I can switch to that real quickly. The next piece that goes on here is another one of those 1 9/16 thick pieces. R takes you back to your rectangle tool. Sometimes you need to zoom in to be able to see it. There we go. And then P takes you to push pull. Pull it up. This one is 77 5/16 inch. Space takes you to the selector. Triple click it. Make it a group. If you can't draw it, you can build it. That's I'm going to show that quote. If you can't draw it, you can't build it. That is super true. You know, and so true in a lot of things. You know, like I know working on cars, you know, if you're trying to undo a screw that's in a tight spot and you can't see it, then you can't unscrew it. So, and you know, I've wasted so much time trying to reach a screw that I can't see. You know, get some light in there, move some stuff out of the way so you can actually see what you're working on. And yeah, the same is true. You know, if you can't draw it or you can't measure it, it's going to be really hard for you to build it with any kind of accuracy. And, you know, accuracy is important. When I measure these things out, I measure them to a 1/16 of an inch. You know, if you're building a house, you can be off by 1/4 of an inch. You know, some construction workers more than that. But when it comes to, you know, when it comes to making anything like this, I don't find it takes any longer to measure to a 1/16 of an inch than it does to measure to an 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch. It's probably going to take you more time to measure stuff poorly because you're going to have a lot more to figure out than if you would just measure it well to begin with. That would be my, I suppose, my personal advice on all of this. Barbara asks, as you're doing the drawing, can you add the measurements to the pieces? I assume you mean in the SketchUp, can you add the measurements to these? And yes, you can. I don't usually do it until I go to print something off because I find it gets complicated. But if you go and click on the tape measure tool, the next option down is the dimensions tool. And if you use that, you know, you don't have to know the dimensions for this. It will tell you the dimensions. So if I wanted to include what the dimensions of this piece below the door is, I can click on an endpoint, go to the next endpoint, and then you can draw this out wherever you want to put it, but 22 7/16 inches. And you can edit that text if you want, but one thing I'll point out, if I want to make a change to this, and I highlight this, and I take my push-pull tool, and let's say I'm going to change its size, that measurement goes along with it. It automatically changes itself. But unless you've edited the text, then it won't. So the dimensions tool is super powerful, really useful for doing these things. But usually I don't bother to put all those dimensions up until after I'm done, just because it gets kind of crowded in here. So I usually leave them off and just add them when I'm going to go build something. So moving along, my next piece on my drawing is 18 5/8 inches out here. And, you know, I suppose one thing I should say is, you know, you can
look at the little box down at the very corner, and you can draw this out manually until you get to, what did I say, 18 5/8. But it can be super fiddly to do that. And, you know, if you zoom in, it makes it a little easier. But the amount of time it takes to do that versus just hitting 8, space, 5 divided by 8, enter, I think that's the quicker, easier way to go. And the piece that's located here is 1 1/16 inch thick. Go back to my rectangle tool, make my rectangle, go to push-pull tool, pull it up. I see that I've written down that it was 44 1/8 inch tall. There it is. Now I'm going to go to, I don't know if you can, I should break it back to full screen. Let me go back to just me real quick. So far, all these pieces have been in a line. Now, this piece has to be up a certain ways. And I've written down that 23.5 from this bottom piece, which I haven't even added this piece yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, using my tape measure, I'm going to go up in this dimension and then make my rectangle. So one thing that'll happen is eventually you'll get a lot of these little tape measure marks on there, and you can go to the eraser tool and you can start erasing them. Or if you've got just a whole bunch of them over here on the side, there's some eyeglasses. If you click that, there's this box that says delete all guides. So I usually just hit that, make them all go away. And then you use this little arrow up here. Oh, can't see it, it's behind the duck's head, but that closes that back down so it's not in your way. So anyway, also if you want to redraw something, like you want to draw a mark and you want it to be to the thickness of those other ones, just draw that, click it and pull it out till, and hover over a point on the other piece where you want it to go to. Like I said, there's a lot of ways to do stuff on here. So, you know, you have to kind of experiment around and figure out what works best for you. But we're going to go up, and when it goes blue like this, I'm pointing at stuff and I realize you can't see me, but when it goes blue like this, it's the vertical axis, and it is 23 1/2 up. And then that piece is 1 1/16 again. Just typing those in. And let me see if I can zoom in enough to illustrate this. So if I go back to my rectangle tool, so now I want to make a rectangle that's that size, but I don't have a mark over here on this side to hover over with this side. But if you hover over this point for a second and then draw it that way, oops. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but it should, well, maybe I should look at it from this direction. There we go. Well, dagnabbit, it doesn't want to do it for me now. Sometimes I try to do something and I think it's going to work and it just doesn't. So, but here's something you can do. You can just pull up from this side, and we'll just mark it 23.5. There we go. You can draw as many lines as you need to, doesn't matter. Hit the rectangle tool again, pull it over, boom. Now if I use push-pull going this direction, oh, see what I did there? I forgot to group this piece. So now I've got a T-shaped piece instead of just a piece of wood. So you gotta use your little backup button to get out of there. Triple click that guy, make it a group, then go back to your rectangle tool, draw that, push pull, and 16.5 is the measurement. There you have it. So again, like I said, kind of tedious. I was probably able to do a lot more measurements in the amount of time it took me to sketch this. But
you know, the value is in the accuracy of your final drawing. Because when you're just making measurements, some of those measurements are going to be off. If you're missing pieces, you don't always know where those pieces actually are supposed to be. So this really helps out for those things. Now there's another horizontal piece that runs even with this one, sits right on top of it and it's connected. So I'll just draw a line up to there. That piece is a little bit thicker. It is 1 9/16 inch. And I'm going to draw a horizontal line there so I can draw it. Pull it to there. Did I? Oh, I didn't group that last piece I made. There we go. And this piece is 37 and 3/16. You kind of start to see what's starting to add up here anyway. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do 4 more pieces, and then I'll do part of the curve so you all can see that. And I'm just going to try to do these quickly. So group that last piece I made, tape measure. The next piece is 15 1/8. And that piece is another 1 9/16. Good. Sometimes it is really kind of tricky to get these things to go where you want them to. And this piece is 34 1/4. Group. And then my next piece is 18 11/16 inches this way. It is a 1 1/16 wide. Rectangle. Boop. Boop. And it is 12 3/16 inch long. I'm going to share that one. There you go. So yeah, I am doing this for free because I don't 100% know how valuable this information is to everyone, but I know I certainly wouldn't be building campers without it. It has really, really, really helped me out. So I can, so yeah, and I get asked this a lot, so I'd like to share it and, help the vintage camper community if I can. And Michael says, let's see, the hand sketch was color coded. Can you color the elements? Yes, you can. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. And I do that sometimes, and sometimes I don't. It just kind of depends on, sometimes information becomes too much, and sometimes information is, never enough. So it just kind of depends. The one last piece I'm going to do is this piece that runs along the bottom, and then I'm going to do the curve. So if I go back to, let me go back to full screen over here. There we go. Oh, wait, come on. Oh, that's the wrong one. There we go. Okay, so sometimes you have to get creative in how you measure things. So this bottom piece, I don't
necessarily, because the end of it was busted off, rotted away. So I didn't necessarily know how far out this went. And I also didn't know back here, you know, where this actual wheel arch was positioned. But I could measure 7.5 inches, that little tip there to there. And I could measure kind of approximately the overall length of this thing. So this stuff down here is all sort of approximate. But we will come back 7.5 inches, and then this piece 58 5/8. So we'll measure back and then we'll measure forward. So if I get my tape tool again, oops, probably want to see what I'm doing, right? There we go. So if I get my tape tool again, there we go. Tape tool. All right, got it. And we move back 7.5 inches. And then from that mark, we measure forward 58 5/8 inches. And then this piece was, I believe, 1 1/16 inch thick. Now that should be the shape of this bottom runner. So if I go to my rectangle tool, I draw a rectangle, push pull, make it the width of that, select it, make it a group. And then I'm going to delete all the guides that I currently have. Okay, so now I have the start of a curve. And what you should be able to see is that this is not, this is a weird curve. So something in here did not measure up correctly. And I think what it was, if I remember right, I don't remember right. But somewhere along the line, this was wrong. And sorry, I'm just trying to think where that went wrong. But yeah, okay, I'm going to move on from there. So, and use this as kind of a point. So sometimes, oh, I think I see what's wrong. How far is that? There's the problem. So right there, doing the SketchUp, will help you find things that you have goofed up. And what I have goofed up, I don't know if you can see it here, but 18 5/8, and I made that 8 5/8. So I'm going to make a mark that is actually 18 5/8. Boom. And see, this whole thing should actually be lined up there. So if I grab this piece and I can hit the shift button and highlight the other one so I can move them both at the same time, and I go grab my move tool, and I'm going to grab them right here at this little corner and move it and put it right there. And then I'm going to erase that mark that I made. And now things look much smoother. So that right there is kind of the power of SketchUp, is when you make a mistake, everything is done to scale, and it is very easy and very obvious to see when you've made that mistake, and also to change it. Whereas if I were doing this all on paper, I would have to, erase and try to make sure that, didn't interfere with the rest of the drawing and blah, 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 blah. Oh, there we go. Oops, Catherine's watching. Hi, Simon. Hi. Catherine went to pick up Simon at the in-laws, so she is down there with them, and they are watching from Belle Plaine. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, this is the important thing. I love this program because I make mistakes. Yeah, don't we all? Okay, so let's talk about this curve.
like I said, this becomes a little bit tricky, and it becomes a little bit of an approximation. Like you kind of think, oh, well, you just connect them all together. And yeah, that's sort of what you do. And obviously I'm only drawing part of this. But if you click this tool here, you will get the 2-point arc. And I find it kind of easiest to do it with that. So what I'm going to do, and sometimes this works better than others, but I'm going to click here on one corner of that, and I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to click actually on this corner right here. And then this is always kind of a tricky tool to use because it wants to kind of flip off in all kinds of directions. And you can go this way. So basically this arc is anchored to these 2 points, and I want it to go right through this top point right there. So I can click it there, and you can see it cuts off right there. But this is not exactly the right shape because it starts to come back in up there. So that's going to be sort of a weird one. But one thing you can kind of do is you can click on this other point, and you can go up through the next one, and you can kind of try and draw that to there. And then if you go to your eraser tool and get rid of that little segment, now you've got a segment that kind of makes a little more sense. I would also come down here and take the line tool and extend it through this here. And let's see, at some point you should be able to get, yeah, just kind of extend it at the same angle as this one. There we go. And it'll sometimes click to help you maintain that angle. So what you're going to do when you build this then is you're going to cut whatever that dimension is right there, so that when you start wrapping your curving around there, hopefully it'll follow all that. But of course, wrapping curving is, it's a bit of a trial and error process. Not a trial and error process, but there's a lot of things that go into it. So if I continue on with what I was doing, and I start at the point where that intersected with there, and I go on to the next piece, but I bring it out and match it to, why is that not, oh, it wants to stick to that. I don't want to do that. There we go. Sometimes it will try to do things that you don't want it to do. And sometimes you just got to start over when it does that. So there's starting to be kind of an awkward bend there. So you would come back and probably want to redraw that a little bit. So if I go back to my arc tool, I'm going to say that's the point that I really want. I'm going to draw it up. No, see, it wants to go a funny direction because it's trying to stay attached to that. I don't want it to be. Oh, wait, did I? Oh, no. So I just gave up and just drew that, and I'm going to undo it now. No, wait. Okay. All right, let's try this again. Oh, oops. I grabbed the wrong tool. Radius framing. That's the official name for the inside bit. Sometimes I say things that are not the right word for things because I don't know what I'm doing. So as you can see, you slowly build that up. And so this is sort of the awkward area where you have to kind of make a guess at it.
And so I'm going to decide to go with this one. And so on and so forth. So not too difficult, but when it comes to when it comes to turning this into a piece, I'm not going to continue on because it just, it takes time that it takes. So when it comes to turning this into a piece, you have to hold down the shift button while you use your selection button on there. And then there's another tool over here in the push-pull menu that is an offset. And so to offset this, as I now know, radius framing, you would, oh, way up there. Lost my selection tool. Oh, I think I clicked away from it. So select all those pieces again. Grab this tool, and then you can offset this however thick that area is supposed to be. On mine, I want to say it was 1.5 inches, and just type that in, and now you've got a piece that's 1.5 inches thick or away from the other. And take your line tool and just connect your ends. If you're drawing a line and it wants to draw another one, just click another one and hit the undo button real quick, and it'll undo it. And I'm just going to connect these two ends, and you see it fills it in once you've made the whole thing. Take your push-pull tool and push it out. Oops. Push it out to the width there, and there is your curbing. That is probably the hardest thing to do. Out of the whole thing, getting that radius in there, doing that is I don't think it's very fun. I didn't like doing it. So what you'll see is some of that length that you measured goes inside of this now. So you could say, well, I know that measurement was right, and so this needs to move back and blah, 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 blah. Or you could say, I'm going to cut it there, and that is going to make this shape form into that shape approximately. So that's kind of what I usually do. So I'll highlight that, take my line tool, which is this little pencil over here, and you could try and make a curve there, but I'm just going to cut it at a straight angle because it doesn't matter super much for this, and then push that out. So now this piece matches this curving, and if I take my dimensions tool, which we talked about a little bit ago, I can measure this top dimension, and I can measure this bottom dimension. Oops, I clicked on something else there. So 16 inches on the bottom, 16 and 3/16 inches on the top. Now, I don't need to know what this actual angle is. Certainly you can measure the angle if you want. There is a protractor tool in there as well. So you can click that and then do this, and it's approximately 100.7 degrees. Great. Or I can just mark my piece of wood 16 inches on one side and 16 and 3/16 inches on the other side, and then adjust my miter saw to cut whatever that angle actually is. And that's how I did the entire thing. So boo on that. Anyway, you see how that kind of goes, how that all sort of adds up over time. And yeah, there is a lot of trial and error on on that. You have to kind of experiment, and if anywhere the art of doing this comes in, it's maybe in how you decide to resolve errors in this process, and how you fix things and what changes you want to make. One of the changes that I decided to make when I was originally doing this, I felt this bottom plate, I guess we would call it in a house. I felt that this was too thin, and was part of the reason why when this camper got in a wreck. Well, the reason why this was all broken was because the camper got in a wreck, and if it just wouldn't have gotten in a wreck in the first place, it wouldn't have been broken. But I felt like it was too thin. I mean, by the time you put a carriage bolt through that, you've taken away quite a bit of, a nice thick chunk of wood. So what I did was I extended this by another, what did I do? Another inch or so, I think. And then I shortened each of these pieces going into it. So I was able to make all of these design changes in this before I started building anything. And I was able to see how that would interact with other pieces and what it would mean that I would have to change here and there. And one of the things I, bumped into was, oh, well, okay, so do I notch this piece out or do I notch this piece out? And ultimately, I notched this piece out. But so, yeah, you can make those little modifications. So Barbara wants to know how to color different pieces. Larry mentioned that bottom plate if the wall sets on top of the floor, skirt board if the wall attaches to the sides. So this would technically, I guess, be a skirt board. See, I'm learning lots of stuff in this video. I should sign up for Larry's classes. If you're following me and you're not one of Larry's students, you should probably be one of Larry's students. So Diane says, I'm having trouble moving off a piece without dragging a line out. I think my mouse clicks aren't right. So if you're trying to move a piece and let me mention that, and then I will mention how to color things. Okay. So, I mean, let's say you're trying to move this piece here, and I've well, I'd love to be a student, Larry, but I've got a lot on my plate already. Maybe at some point. Before the next camper. How about that? Okay, so if you've grouped an object together, you can move it very easily. If you've grouped an object together and then you've clicked on it again, and you see how everything else grays out, and I try to move it here, if I grab a side, it actually is just going to distort this piece. So if you are having that trouble, you might take your selection tool and select outside of that to close that group, and then come back with your move tool, and you should be able to move it. If that's not the problem might be that you haven't grouped it yet. So try that as well. So, okay, if you want to color code pieces so it becomes more clear what, pieces are different sizes that you need to watch out for, there is this little tool over here that looks like a paint bucket. And if you click on that, it'll open up your other window. And you can, there's textures you can add. There's all kinds of different colors you can add. You can make things look like wood if you want. One thing, if you're going to print out your diagram, it's a good idea to use a lighter color. Like don't print it in black because you won't be able to see lines, or if you put measurements on there. So usually I'll code things in yellow. So a few of these are bigger pieces, like this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece. And the other pieces are thinner. So these colors are maybe too close to one another. I'll go with like a green. How about that? It's a little darker than I would want, but so it's as simple as just taking your paintbrush and clicking on the different pieces. And if you've grouped them all appropriately, it's really easy to do that. Let's see, did I group this one? I didn't group this one. If you have a piece that isn't grouped and you try to drop a paintbrush on it, it will just paint whatever side you've done. So you want to make sure your pieces are grouped, and then you can color code them much more easily. I don't usually do a lot of color coding, but sometimes it's useful.
And sometimes I color code something just to make a printout, and then I go back and I undo all the color coding just because I don't want it in there in the future. Charles Lukey, I hope I'm saying that right. Is it possible to select several groups and create a cut list? It is possible to select several groups, but it doesn't have any ability to, at least in the free version, to make a sort of component parts list for you. So you have to kind of do that yourself. But you can group groups of groups together. So I'll show you in my other model. This is this is a good point. This is one of the things you would want to do in the winter while you wait for the weather to get better. And yeah, if you've got a bad day, you know, take your measurements that you've made and just sit down in the afternoon and start making your model. So let me show you. So as you can see, as we've been going along, it's been auto saving this. So it's saved right now. I can hop out of it if I wanted. And I'm actually going to open up my model that I've been making of the Calcraft to show you something and also to grab something. So this is the model I've made, and it on my little laptop, it runs a little laggy at this point because it's started to get to be pretty complicated. It runs a little better on my desktop upstairs, but it's harder for me to set up and talk to the camera upstairs. So I'm in my living room or dining room right now, so if anyone wondered. So I've put this into many different groups, like different sections are in different groups, and they are tagged. If you plan on using the SketchUp viewer on iOS or on Android, you need to tag different parts. And I'll go back and show you how to tag on the other one. But I can click on different parts and it will select just those parts because I've grouped them separately. And if you click on something and highlight it and right click, there's this option to hide things. Now, one thing I'll say about hiding things is sometimes it gets a little, sometimes you hide something and kind of forget about it and it gets hidden within a group and then it's hard to unhide it. But if you click hide, it goes away. So once you've done all your framing and now you're planning out your interior, it becomes kind of nice to hide something so that you can get that kind of cutaway view. Yeah, I don't want to hide that. So, oh, you can also, if you go to the little eyeglasses, there is a view option for hidden objects, and it'll give you kind of this dashed view that shows stuff. And there's like some stuff out here that I've made several iterations of. It is a neat function. It's pretty cool. These are the when it came time for me to do the let me unhide this just to make a point, not to go off on too many tangents. But when it came time to make the ceiling joists, I, instead of trying to wrap them around the model, because I didn't really need to know that, I just needed to know how many they were and record how far apart they were. So I just laid them all out here flat, basically. And I've always kind of thought I'd go back and add them to the model, and it just hasn't really been a priority for me. So anyway, I don't need to see the hidden objects. There we go. I gotta kind of look around my computer to see things. So if you've properly tagged something, though, you don't have to worry about hiding things. You can just click them on and off. Curbside wall, curbside front cabinet, driver's side wall. Put that back on. The sink, I don't know why I tagged that separate, but the kitchen. Take the frame off. The wheel wells were supposed to go with the frame, so I don't have any.
Oh, no, they're not supposed to go with the frame because they're not attached to it. So yeah, tagging is really useful for being able to cut things away when you don't want to see them, or bring them back. So, and like I said, that's street side, driver side, street side. Yep, I need to rename that. And I haven't cut windows in the top part yet because I haven't got to that part yet. And you can see my cabinets aren't yet 100% accurate with this, where they meet the wall, because that was just kind of a guess on the curve there. So, but one thing I wanted to do while I was here was I wanted to, I'm having trouble getting my mouse there. Okay. I wanted to bring this wall over into my tutorial. So I'm just going to control copy. I don't want to save any changes. Open my tutorial back up. Okay, so this is where we were, and I'm just going to paste my wall in here. I am going to hide it for now because I don't want to mess with it. So, okay, let's say we want to make a group of groups. Let's say I want all of these except the this. I'm going to forget what you called it, Larry. I'm going to have to wind back. Radius framing. Let's say we want all of these pieces except the radius framing in one group for whatever reason. You know, what I did when I made my walls is this is sort of a top level of the, well, the whole thing is one group, and then the radius framing is one group that can be separated from the rest of it, so that I can hide things easily and not have to worry about it showing up when I'm trying to get measurements for something else. So if we just take our selection tool and we click and drag a box over everything, it'll select everything. Then you can hold down the shift tool and click on the thing that you want to deselect. Now I've got all these other pieces highlighted. I can right click and make them a group. And now they are a group and that is a group. I can make all of these things a group. So now I can click on it. I get everything. If I double click on that group, I can click that, or I can click that. So I can hide just the radius framing. So doing that does occasionally involve some planning and some forethought on what you're going to want to be able to see, when you're going to want to see it. And that maybe gets a little bit more advanced. But if I back out of that to where I can click this whole group and I want to tag it so that I can use it more effectively in other things, I go over here on the right, there's a little tag tool. And I've already got a tag here for curbside wall. I think that's from when I copied and pasted the other one. But let's say I want to create a tag for this that's called, let's call it tutorial wall. Okay, so I've created a tag for that. I need to apply it. If I highlight that and click on that, now that will be tagged tutorial wall. And sorry, I got to look around my monitor here to find the, there we go. Entity info is the top little block there. And so if I, there we go, right down here, tags, there is a tutorial wall tag, and I click the eyeball on that and it'll make it go away. If I unhide my other one, so now I can click away curbside wall, I can click away tutorial wall. So one other thing that is important for this process is to sort of make things match, let's say. So
to iron out where things are different on one side or the other, because you're going to make measurements on both sides. And once you've built the model for both sides, what you're going to find out is that they don't match 100%. They hopefully will match close, but they might not match 100%. So what I did at that point, after I made those two, is I selected one wall. I grouped both walls, so they're two separate entities. And then I grabbed it, I brought it over, and I laid it right over my other wall, right there. Actually, I'm going to lay it on that. There we go, right there. So then I could see where there were differences. And looks like I got these pretty well lined up. But so you can see with that radius that I made on there. Oh, that's because I've got the whole thing built up on here. So this actually has the curbing. There we go. Get rid of that. So you can see, there might be some differences. We're actually pretty close here, which isn't too surprising since getting a little laggy there. But what you can do then is line the two up and see where there's differences and decide where you want to make those differences count. And that's something else that I did once I built them. I laid the two on top of one another, and I found out where I had built up the curbing too much, where I built up the radius framing too much, and correct those. So, every step of the way, you're kind of self-correcting, checking, planning for the future, making these adjustments. Make sense? Ta-da! Hopefully that's the end result. One thing that gets a little bit tricky is when you're going to do your paneling that goes on the wall is you have to copy that radius curve, the outside edge of it, and then click it into the paneling and push it through. Good luck with that. But yeah, as Larry says, it is very important for both walls to have identical profiles. Absolutely true. Absolutely. Sometimes you find some discrepancies. You wonder how they even built them in the first place. But one other thing, let me point this out real quick. So like I said, this was our original, when we took the skin off, this is what we saw. And like I said, you can tell this whole front part is kind of, and so just assuming things are square, you can kind of fix some of that, but also assuming like this piece of wood that runs all the way through, that should be level, because that is where your top half of your skin overlaps the bottom half. So you need something there to be able to staple the edge of that gutter to it. So if we look in the model, which this wall, when I put it all together, it turned out that once you corrected for all the things not being square, it lined up in the right spot. So that was kind of, a way that I knew I was on the right track with it anyway. But that's a lot of talking. So any questions? I don't know what else I have to say about that, but does that help? Does that make sense? Let me know. I feel like maybe there was something else I was going to say. Oh, how to print things. That's what I was going to say. As I'm standing here looking at this great big stack of printouts that I have, it may be useful to know how to actually print something out. So let's say you've drawn all your dimensions in here and you want to, I don't want that showing up. You want to print that out so you can go and cut these pieces of wood and figure that all out. So I'm just going to add a few measurements on here just to kind of, make a point of it. Great. We'll call that. So, okay, you want to make a printout, which assumes you have a printer. So you can click on the little lines that are there and go down to print. And now what it will do is it doesn't print directly to your printer. It's kind of weird, but it will print it to a PDF, download it to your computer, and then let you print it off. So one thing to say is I always click white background, so I'm not wasting a bunch of ink painting the horizon and atmospheric, qualities on there. But go to a white background, and this is the print preview window, so you can still move things around. Orbit works. You can click zoom and zoom in. Hand tool to get it positioned. I always try to position it as large as possible, and then hit print to PDF, and it'll download it, and then you can print it. And do that as many times as you want. But so that's really nice. Oops, I don't want to do that. Really nice to have that feature to be able to do that. There you go. And then it's downloaded. Double click on that, and that'll pop up. And I always keep every printout that I make so that I can refer back to them and see what I screwed up. If I screwed something up. But yeah, so yeah, thanks a million. You're welcome. Just need to practice all the icons. Yep, practice with the icons. It can be kind of confusing to start this process, but they're pretty straightforward once you get down to it. Like you say, oh, I want to make a rectangle. R, make a rectangle. Oh, I want to make a line. L, line. Not everything has a keyboard shortcut though, unfortunately. So some things are easier said than done. Push all the buttons. Yep, you'll get there eventually. And yeah, it's a very full-featured program, even though it's free, and it gives you a lot of capability. It's and there's a lot of features in it that I don't use that I know are in there, and I just have never bothered to explore them enough to use them, because usually I'm working on a tight schedule, and so I I do it the way I know I can and say, hey, I'll figure that out later at some point. But if you want to also, I think I made a point of it in an older video that with as expensive as wood was getting to be, you could use this to make a pretty precise wood list to know what you're going to need to use, and just by measure them out, count them, divide them up into 2x4s or 2x6s, whatever you're buying, and save yourself some money on waste material. You're still going to spend a lot of money. So yeah, everyone, thank you so much. You're very welcome. If you stumble across this tutorial, I don't know, just through the powers of the internet, thanks for watching, and thanks for following along. Thanks for making it this far into it. Like, subscribe, etc. Hit the notification bell. And yeah, I actually have to pick up a photo booth after a little while, but I don't really have anything to do right now. So if anybody has any other questions, I'd stick around and answer some. Yes, you're all welcome. Very welcome. And yeah, do you like, what do I want to say? Do you like live streams? Like I said, this is the first one I've ever done, and I really haven't participated in many. Did a live stream with Larry, and kind of gave us the idea to use this to sort of answer
Oh, well, we'll see you later, Larry. Have a good class. Oh, yeah. Barbara mentioned, before you print, do you add the measurements? Yes. It won't automatically do the measurements for you. You have to use the little dimensions tool, which is under the tape measure panel, and add those to it yourself, which is, it can be very time consuming, but because of how many different things you need to make measurements of, I find it kind of obnoxious to put them on as I'm going. So I just, build it all up, and then I go back and add dimensions to whatever section I'm going to print out when I get ready to do it. Sometimes though, sometimes I'll go back and, it's easier for me to just draw the measurements in. So if I know what screen my cursor's on. So if I just, sometimes I'll just print out a little section that I'm working on, and I'll just write the dimensions on it rather than spend the time, in the computer putting them on there. It just depends on what kind of mood I'm in. But yeah, the live stream's kind of fun. I used to, I actually have a degree in art. I was a painting major in college, and I used to teach drawing and painting and photography at a local art center. And sometimes I felt like I was talking too much, but I don't always know when to shut up. The nice thing about teaching art, though, is you get to say all kinds of just silly stuff that makes no sense whatsoever. But it's okay because you're an artist and you get away with it. But I kind of like to go back to doing that. So yeah, I don't know. Any other questions? I'm just going to sit here and think of something to ramble on about for a few minutes, I guess. Catherine was headed back this way. Oh, she's here now. So I guess I'm done. Let's see. Maybe Simon will come say hi. Hello? Hey. I was just finishing up. Sleep. Oh, that's okay. I'll let him sleep. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. So thank you. I'll come up with something else to do a live stream about at some point, and I guess we will call it a day. Oh yeah, Urban Sketchers. Yeah, that's a cool group. I used to follow them quite a bit. I've never personally done much in the way of urban sketching. I used to do a lot of urban photography, but yeah, some of those folks, it's just impressive to watch their skill and just the ability to make marks that flow and have this nice lyrical quality, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, do I have a photography YouTube channel? I do not. I don't really have any. I don't really have any much in the way of photography up on the internet these days. I used to have a website, but I took it down a while back because I was just paying for it, not using it for anything. But see you later, Larry. I don't know that person. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. It's the world of art is very, very broad, and there's room for everyone. Okay, I gotta wrap it up. Any future questions? Leave me a comment, and I will do my best to answer it. as I get the time. And if you come up with something else you want to do a live stream about, let me know. And if I think it's a good idea and I have time for it, I will be happy to do it. And maybe if I start doing this regularly, I will upgrade my audio and video equipment. But until then, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. New videos come out fairly regularly, so make sure and like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.